Welcome in, Smite fans. We are ready to kick off the very first week of the European SCL, and then we'll get into the North American, which we've seen a little bit of already. But like I said, we're going to kick it off right away with week number 1 of the European SCL. I'm Aggro, joined by Taco. And Taco, we're going to start it off here with a matchup of the two teams that came out of the relegations process.
Should be a really exciting matchup indeed, especially getting to see how these two teams are going to face off since that relegations point in time.
Yeah, not a whole lot of changes for either team, except for the fact that CAZ Esports, you may recognize them more as Retribution. That was their name during that relegations process. But it's still the same guys, Elexum, Jeron, they're still leading the team. We're ready to go right into picks and bans here. First week of the European SCL, Game 1, kicking it off.
And it should be a really exciting matchup. What are you expecting to see as far as picks and bans are concerned? You can see a pretty conventional ban on the Circuit coming through.
Yeah.
But the Zeus, I think, is even more traditional. They are not trying to permit any sort of AoE control coming through on that map.
No, Zeus, definitely a mid-god that we've seen a lot of on both the console and the European side, or the console and PC side of things, I should say, in both North America and Europe. Really, everyone seems to be favoring that Greek god of the middle lane. Poseidon and Thanatos are going to be the two other bans here. CAZ has the first pick available, and it's going to be the Thanatos. I assume that's going to be in the jungle for OverPoweredUSB, but we have seen a little bit in solo as well.
Can never count out that solo pick, and Thanatos, not necessarily the most favorable matchup against the Hercules, but that could really go either way should they opt to take that into the solo lane. But the Hercules Sylvanus, so already a decent amount of sustain coming through on the side of TMNT.
Absolutely, good tankiness, good sustain. Now they just need some damage to round out that draft. Neith going to be the selection here for CAZ. Pretty early on, we haven't really seen Neith be a popular pick either on console or PC, but CAZ really valuing it early on here. Khepri is a pick that they played consistently during the relegations process. It was Elexum moving over to the support role and really playing a ton of this Khepri, so no surprise to see Khepri locked in early on here for CAZ.
Still a decent bit of flex picking available on the side of CAZ, you know, with the Thanatos potential and solo. Neith at the same time could potentially be going into the mid lane. But what I really like about CAZ's draft so far is if it is a dual lane Neith, that should compensate pretty nicely for the hard push that'll be coming out from TMNT with that Sylvanus Apollo. Neith Khepri is definitely not a dual lane to count out.
That's true. A lot of push on both ends if that is going to be the dual lane composition for CAZ. And even if that is the hunter and the support, it doesn't mean that Khepri is necessarily going to be there or that Sylvanus is going to be in the dual lane. We've seen a lot of roaming support. Sometimes they even end up all the way over in solo lane. So you never really know what teams are going to bring out here on in the console league or the SPL as well. Looking at the next set of bans, Thoth and a Willix here for CAZ, and two magical hunters banned away by TMNT. They think that Neith's going to be in the middle lane, so they ban away Freya and Kronos, but it's going to be Aphrodite. I assume that's going to be in the mid lane, but that's still, it's sustain is the name of the game right now for TMNT.
And at the same time, CAZ retaliating immediately with that Isis pick. So there's a ton of early game drafting coming out for the side of CAZ Esports. And the Odin to really lock it away, that is a strong pick considering all that healing sustain that TMNT is trying to roll with. They might not necessarily get away with now with the Odin on the board. Love
this pick for CAZ. I think TMNT kind of forgot about it, and they're not worried. They're going for a very old combo, the Aphrodite Kali sort of late game. It's unbeatable late game, frankly. I mean, it's so difficult to get through Kali having 3 lives and then the sustain from Aphrodite and the sustain from Sylvanus. But TMNT's got to get there, and they're going up against a very, very early game composition here for CAZ Esports. Very surprised we didn't see TMNT ban away the Odin if they were planning on going for this much sustain.
That could potentially just be something that you might overlook in the drafting phase at the same time, because I don't think any team necessarily wants to face off against an Odin, especially not when you're drafting this much sustain onto one side. And we do see the Neith going into that dual lane, which I feel is a bit more favorable considering that Neith as a hunter role compensating against that Sylvanus Apollo, she's going to really be able to negate any kind of early game pressure that they're trying to make happen in that dual lane.
Well, Jeron's going to be all alone here against Welshbeastq in the lane. Both supports starting off in the mid lane. It looks like Elexum has actually moved back to the middle lane. The longtime mid laner had spent most of relegations as a support player for what was then known as Retribution, now CAZ Esports. Looks like he's gone to his initial role. Jeron definitely losing this trade on the left-hand side. Meanwhile, on the right, Fire Elemental started up by TMNT. They've got the pressure. They're going to be able to secure them both, it looks like.
Khepri just roaming around that safe side. You can see 4-man presence coming out for the side of CAZ, which I think is a safe maneuver considering how weak that early game Kali can be. It's best to just go ahead and apply as much pressure as possible onto that jungle mid support. Really make them work if they're trying to get anything going online.
It really does take a while for Auzrik to get ready to go on this Kali. That's one of the reasons we don't really see her as much in competitive play. Her late game is unmatched. I mean, having an ultimate that makes you literally unkillable for a good amount of time and then be able to heal off your passive target really makes it difficult to handle a character like Kali in the late game. But this is where CAZ really needs to start invading buffs, and the fact that the blue buff has gone the way of TMNT, and it looks like CAZ doesn't really want to invade that speed buff either. That's already, it's not a huge win, but it's a significant one for TMNT to get their first rotation of buffs. CAZ really cannot allow this composition for TMNT to free farm. They need to play aggressive in the early game.
The mentality behind CAZ's draft, more likely than not, there will be a lot of attacking and invading coming out once these teams hit level 5, especially with CAZ. They're just going to try and utilize that Neith ultimate as much as possible. The whole mentality behind Jeron here is spam that ultimate as much as possible, really make TMNT sweat inside of these jungle fights, because if you never know when to anticipate a Neith ultimate, you never know how that could affect a potential invade or you trying to compensate and defend against it, and that's a really potent threat inside of these early game fights.
Absolutely. I mean, CAZ's draft is really well suited to invading the enemy jungle on the right-hand side specifically. Odin, great clear in the lane, not going to get out cleared very, very often as long as he can play aggressively, and you really should be able to with a passive jungler like Kali in the early game. Not usually too scared of your lane opposition, though Predators on this Hercules does have some kill potential in lane all by himself. One of the things that makes Hercules very, very strong right now. There aren't a lot of soul laners that can really find solo kills. I mean, you look at Terra, Vamana to some degree can, but like most of them are just kind of waiting until the later stages of the game. Hercules is one of the few that's popular right now that can really punish you if you get out of position.
A huge issue though that could really come out for CAZ is if they don't lock down whoever they choose to go on with the Neith ultimate or just their composition in general. TMNT is going to potentially snowball, and if you can get an Aphrodite Kali into those mid-late game stages, you're definitely in a lot of trouble.
That's a great point. I mean, CAZ has to find their picks early on and really make sure they finish them off, because if they allow someone to survive at low HP, they aren't going to be at very low HP for long with the Aphrodite sustain, the Sylvanus sustain as well. And this begs the question, Taco, I mean, is this one of those games where you want to go heavy anti-heal, or do you want to just get as much power as possible and try and blow someone up?
There's a lot of risk and reward involved with trying to go the power route. If they opt to go for the power early on with that Isis, Thanatos, sure, you could have the burst lockdown potential that you're looking for, but at the same time, should you overlook the anti-heal, at any point in time, that Aphrodite Sylvanus sustain could just be the little bit that you need in order to survive long enough just to make it through. Even if you take a couple of early deaths, you'll still be good in the long run.
Absolutely. And as well, for the side of CAZ, they do have the Odin cage, which is 100% healing reduction, so you're not going to have to worry about building as much anti-heal with an Odin on your team, but he does need to be in these fights if he wants to make an impact with that Odin cage. Not a whole lot of action right now. 4.5 minutes in. This is the dream scenario for TMNT. None of their buffs have gotten invaded. In fact, I love Auzrik's positioning already on time on that right side blue buff. And CAZ just is going to let him have it. Just
one of those circumstances where you know that if you're not on your buffs 100% of the time, it leaves you way too susceptible to those counter invades. And CAZ, it's a little bit risky. Odin's just been spamming his ultimate. It looks like Hercules could be the potential first target here.
They're looking for Predators. There's the execute as well. And Overpowered going to be able to knock him down with that Death Scythe. An easy first blood goes the way of CAZ. And that's the power of the Odin. Nowhere for Predators to go. And he's got great healing, yes, but that doesn't matter inside that cage.
And the real downside for TMNT here is even after expending 3 ultimates, they still can't pressure into CAZ's draft. They can afford to burst as many ultimates as they like in these early game fights, and they almost had a Gold Fury right there.
Not a bad plan there, especially with the Isis. Elexum going to throw out the Spirit Ball and make sure that Mr. Turtle isn't going to be able to get close enough to use that Wrath of Terra. But the Gold Fury now pulled by TMNT. Again, they have the sustain necessary to make sure that they don't take too much damage from this. but because of the Oracle vision provided for CAZ, they're going to know exactly what's going on and stop that Gold Fury attempt, no problem whatsoever. So the first blood goes the way of CAZ, but they do secure both right side buffs. I think, for me, Taco, I would have liked to see CAZ make that exact same play just 30 seconds earlier to open up the window to invade the buffs on the right side.
Having that potential to invade the buffs immediately after securing the pick on Hercules would have definitely been a probably more aggressive decision. And at the same time, you have to consider that TMNT did have 3 players available at that speed buff rotation with 3 ultimates burned. While they aren't necessarily in any danger early on, considering TMNT's draft, at the same time, they don't want to risk any unnecessary picks on themselves.
Well, right now, builds looking pretty standard for both teams. TMNT, you see Aphrodite gone for the cooldown boots in the middle lane. 50-meter fly, really electing to get that extra mana, and of course the CDR that's necessary to pump out those heals as much as possible. Really going to be looking for him on this Aphrodite to make sure that that Undying Love ultimate is there to immune the execute from OverPoweredUSB. I expect we'll see 50-meter fly tethered to Mr. Turtle and Predators quite a bit in the mid stages of the game, and then really transition to helping out Auzrik in the later stages.
I'd imagine his entire game plan right now is just full-on utility Aphrodite. Don't really have to worry too much about damage, considering that with a draft like that, they're banking on that Apollo and Khalid to come online. They don't want to really be super concerned about the Aphrodite getting some kind of massive power spike to roam around and look for these, you know,
big damage, you
yeah,
know, lovebirds and back-offs.
That's just not what you're really looking for.
Though back-off does do a lot of damage. Even when built mostly utility, Aphrodite can really pump out some good damage if you're too close to her linked target with that knockback ability. On the left-hand side, we see that Jeron has gone for the Transcendence Rush, finishing that off before finishing the boots. And Welshbeastq, he's gone for the boots, and it looks like it's going to be an Ichabod next. Do you like this pickup, or would you have rather seen him go for something like a Devourer's Gauntlet?
I prefer the pickup of Ickful onto Welshbeastq solely because of the fact that with a Neith being in the duo lane, she's a lot more punishable than, say, if she were to have been drafted into that mid lane role, because Neith is probably one of the weaker hunters when it comes to boxing, especially against an Apollo who loves to box once he gets those boots online. And now with the addition of the Ickful, Jeron's really going to have to be safe and careful in this duo lane. Without boots online, the Apollo can certainly chase him down and look for a pick, which kind of ruins CAZ's whole idea behind this Neith ultimate.
Though I think on the other side of that coin, we're talking about how their TMNT is really relying on Welshbeastq and Auzrik to carry them through the late game. Wouldn't have Devourer's Gauntlets been a better power spike for Welshbeastq once he completed those and kind of filled that role that TMNT wants him to fill in the late game?
Yes, but at the same time, if you opt for the Devils on Apollo, you don't have as much kill potential onto that Neith in the duo lane, and considering Welsh's playstyle that we've seen coming out from him in relegations, he's definitely the more aggressive hunter, and he's looking to make the big solo play, because if he comes in through clutch with that 1v1, that's really all TMNT need in order to keep this survivability mentality going through into that mid-late game area.
Gold Fury looked like it wanted to be done there by CAZ. Well, rather, CAZ wanted to do the Gold Fury, but now they want the kill onto Mr. Turtle. Undying Love's already been used. Minos is here trying to get the cage, but the knockup for Mr. Turtle creates enough space, but not long enough. OverPoweredUSB has got both kills for CAZ early on in this game. Nowhere for that immobile Sylvanus to go. 2 of those defensive ultimates used, but not enough to save the life of the support, and that's going to open up this Gold Fury attempt for CAZ. Looks like TMNT willing to give that up, no problem. No way to contest that into Circle of Protection. 9.5 minutes in, CAZ, they're up about 2,500 gold, 2-0 in kills. That Gold Fury as well, definitely a big boon for them.
Aphrodite ultimate and Sylvanus ultimate, both huge factors when it comes to TMNT's team fight, and with both of those having to be burned out defensively and not even able to save the life of Mr. Turtle, that's really just one of those instances where you just have to sacrifice the objective and go back to your lanes and back into that whole farm and just try to make it to late.
You see how strong the CC potential is for CAZ Esports draft. I mean, they've got the Spirit Ball from Elexum sets up the easy route for Jeron, which forces 50-meter fly to use that Undying Love, and you really cannot afford to have a character like Hercules, Sylvanus, or Aphrodite get hit by those long-range CCs. You really have to look for 50-meter fly, Mr. Turtle, and Predators to be pretty good at juking out those abilities, because one Spirit Ball or one Spirit Arrow Lots of spirits, actually, I just realized. They're really relying on those spirits between those abilities. But either way, you really cannot afford to get hit by those. And it comes down to the old, fighting game sort of mentality. Just don't get hit, because if you do, it's going to be very difficult for you to survive without using multiple ultimates or relics.
I mean, even just looking at that last engagement where Mr. Turtle was picked off, Minos actually wasn't able to get his cage off onto the Sylvanus. He was stunned out and unable to make it into that engagement properly, but it didn't even matter just because, like you mentioned, the lockdown potential with the CC chain, it stacked pretty appropriately, and there's just not much room left to go for an immobile Sylvanus, and the Thanatos scythe is already chunking pretty heavily at this point in time.
Absolutely, Overpowered definitely doing quite a bit of damage on this Thanatos. Has gone for the utility sort of mobility start with this Shield of Regrowth. Not worried about the damage quite yet, though it looks like he'll be building into a penetration item next up. CAZ wanted to do the Portal Demon, but the rest of TMNT is here, doing a good job of controlling these objectives, or at least making CAZ think about doing these objectives. See the rotation coming from Welshbeastq. Portal Demon gets below 2/3 HP. Minos zoning away Auzrik, but Minos already about half HP. Here comes Mr. Turtle around the back. There's the knockup directly into the boulder, and Elexum gets absolutely erased. Welshbeastq dashes forward, pulled back in. Waldrom's gonna fall as well. Predator's able to pick him up. What a beautiful combination between the support and the solo laner for TMNT for life. 2-2 now, and the opportunity to pull this Portal Demon.
That was just so insanely greedy by CAZ to keep trying to poke away at that Portal Demon. They weren't taking it lower than 50% health, and at the same time, they're just taking so much damage.
Minos jumps in, hits through with the Bird Bomb, but isn't able to secure that Portal Demon. Nice try for the solo laner, but he's absolutely going to pay for it unless that Hercules actually saves Minos there, I think. He pulls him into a great spot to jump away. A little bit of an unfortunate turn of events there for the solo laner for TMNT. Red team does get the Portal Demon, but meanwhile on the left-hand side, Jeron, he's been pushing this entire time, able to secure that tier 1 tower. Overpowered comes over, steals away the red buff. Purple buff's gonna be next. Great job by CAZ to split the map and continue to farm.
Excellent response by TMNT, though, to recognize they're going to be losing their left side of the map. We might as well secure this T1 tower in the solo lane, let Hercules use his TP to protect that T2 and prevent Jeron from split pushing any further. But at the same time, do you really... I don't think that it's ideal for them to be losing so much of their jungle early on, especially after they just had such a great team fight. They should have probably disengaged a lot sooner than what they did.
Either way, even in kills right now, and the lead not too big for CAZ Esports. We can take a look at the graphs. We saw them spike up pretty heavily after that Gold Fury and kill engagement right around the 10-minute mark, but a slight decline now. TMNT has stabilized a little bit with that team fight win. And again, going back to the positioning for Mr. Turtle, wrapping around the backside, finding two with the Wrath of Terra, and no hesitation whatsoever from Predators. Really great teamwork coming out of TMNT for life.
We also saw the potential in TMNT's draft because it's still fairly early on into the game, but with all 5 of them grouped in one area, that is just so difficult to handle. All that sustain, a 3-man Bird Bomb, taking opponents down to such low amounts of HP, and then they're immediately healed right back up to where they started.
Right now, you see no anti-healing quite yet coming out of anyone from CAZ Esports. In fact, it's going to be a Warlock Sash for Elexum in the mid lane. We haven't seen a whole lot of this item, Taco. What do you think about the pickup in this particular scenario?
Warlock Sash predominantly for the health, I think, at this point in time. He just wants to be a little bit tankier to try and deal with any sort of potential rotations from the Kali or Hercules even. And you can never also count out the Apollo. We saw Welshbeastq have no issues whatsoever flying across the map to engage in the solo lane side at around level 14, 13. So that's always a threat considering how aggressive that TMNT has been playing this draft of theirs.
Gold Fury started up once more by CAZ. They do have the Circle of Protection, but the rest of TMNT is here. It's dropped. Circle of Protection is going to be able to secure that Gold Fury. I thought TMNT was going to try and force the engagement after that, but they seem content to just walk away. CAZ get the Gold Fury with no contention whatsoever from TMNT, pushing their gold lead to right around 3,600.
Once the Ice's ultimate comes out and the Gold Fury is already at that 40% or lower threshold, I think the smart decision at that point in time is to just back off, because the likelihood of a steal in those kind of circumstances is so unfavorable to you, and to risk putting your team out of position and losing a member or two and then having your potential mid lane pushed down, that's just a situation that I don't think TMNT necessarily wanted to try and put themselves into.
And playing pretty smart right now. I mean, playing to their draft, I would say. I mean, we've talked so much about how good TMNT's draft is in the late game. They're willing to give up a 14-minute Gold Fury because they understand this isn't the time that they should be fighting the opposition. CAZ does have about a 3,600 gold lead, like we mentioned, but is that enough at this stage against this comp for TMNT? Is this enough to really make sure that TMNT isn't going to get to the late game?
That's the issue with these healer compositions, and the main reason I believe that TMNT is so willing to give up these big objectives early on. If you can maintain that gold lead within 6-7K, I think you're still sitting in a pretty nice position to be able to get away and get your draft online to the point where you're just kind of unkillable.
At what point are we looking for levels or items? What is the kind of signal that TMNT is about to start really doing work with this composition?
Predominantly items. Once you see the Kali get the chins online, that's such a key item on the side of Kali, really where your shred potential comes through. And then we'll probably start seeing Auzrik just immediately jumping into that backline as much as possible, trying to just do tons of poke potential and look for anything that Welshbeastq could just pick off with his ultimate flying into the backline as well. It just becomes really dangerous overall for CAZ once the Kali comes online.
Either way, they gotta wait a little bit until this Aphrodite comes up. 3 levels behind Elexum in the middle lane right now as a tier 1 tower falls. Grouping there from CAZ pays off in the form of 500 gold. Tier 1 tower gets knocked down in the middle lane. That's extra important because it does expose Aphrodite even more. See on this left-hand side, Welshbeastq gonna stay here and knock down his opponent's tower for the red side. Jeron's back, and that's going to make sure the Welshbeastq is going to ultimate, but he's going to the fight around the Portal Demon, and it does go the way of TMNT for life, despite that cage coming down. CAZ not able to pick up a kill or the objective.
And Mr. Turtle happily eating that Neith ultimate, not really doing too much damage at this point in time.
Waldrom pulled in, nice pull there from the Sylvanus, and Waldrom's not even going to be able to get that Scarab's Blessing off. Auzrik able to pick up a kill for the jungler for TMNT for life. All set up by that Sylvanus. Now the tier 1 tower, 5 members here. You can already see just how much the sustain is going to matter for TMNT for life. Predators was about half HP, not anymore. Got the heals for himself, got the heals from Aphrodite as well. Gonna get stunned out, taking a decent amount of damage from the tower. You can see Auzrik not even worried about it, trying to get in there, but he's silenced beautifully by Elexum, which means he can't get his ultimate off. Auzrik's gonna fall, and the retreat is on here for TMNT.
But at the same time, Welshbeastq can't escape from the Odin ultimate, and he's going to fall. Overpower is just all over the place, and he's going to be deteriorated by a nice hurt too.
Jeron trying to find Mr. Turtle, who's falling low, but those lovebirds are paying off once more. Bird Bomb going to find 2, and Elexum finishes off the support. Predators rooted in place. Not going to be able to driving strike out of that scythe damage there from Overpowered, but a great response from CAZ underneath their tier 2 tower. Just good CC chain there, potential onto Auzrik, who was a little bit too far forward. Fire Giant is looked at right now by CAZ, but it's a little bit risky with how low 3 of their members are. Predators and 50-meter Fly are here. Gonna try and defend it. Predators right into the front line, finds 2 with the pickup and only 1 with the push, but there's the boulder. Jeron had the Aegis though, didn't take a whole lot of damage. 50-meter Fly, we knew you well, my friend. Overpowered gonna pick up his 4th kill of the game. It was all a bait from CAZ, and they're looking for 2 more kills. Predators gonna eat that bird bomb. Overpowered looking for the execute. Not going to be able to find it clean, but Elexum's going to be able to pick up his 2nd kill. Auzrik has returned and is able to pick up 1 kill with the ultimate there. Elexum going to fall, but Auzrik going to have to retreat. Oh no, maybe not. Welshbeastq is back, doing quite a bit of damage on this Apollo.
And Welshbeastq picking up Overpowered. Very strong movement in the back line. You can see Auzrik chasing down Jeron, really looking for this kill.
Great route, but it's not enough. Auzrik able to pick him up, courtesy of that stun. Waldrom just gonna juke out long enough until Welshbeastq finally finds him, but the Minos' jump actually juked out by Auzrik. He just had to wait and let the bird bomb expire. Instead, got a little bit greedy for the kill. Not gonna be able to fall himself, but just unfortunate there for the solo laner for CAZ. Auzrik able to escape. We've talked about it so much with how much sustain TMNT for Lyfe has. Auzrik may be low, but he's never too low to back, especially with 50-meter fly back in action. An extended engagement is always going to go the way of TMNT for Lyfe with their sustain. CAZ tried to bait the Fire Giant. They got a kill for it, but they end up paying. Fire Giant looks like it's going to go down in favor of TMNT for Lyfe. Certainly not the fastest Fire Giant we've ever seen. Not going to break any world records that way, but doesn't matter as all 5 members strong with the buff.
And right there, immediately, we saw the turnaround happen in favor of CAZ underneath that T2 tower. Elexum had the beautiful silence onto Auzrik, which really deterred the rest of TMNT and put them on the run. And CAZ had the cleanup, but that overstay and overcommitment chase into the jungle side of TMNT just really allowed TMNT to punish CAZ so heavily. Like the Apollo ultimate just coming back through, and while Odin cages are always a death and potential, nuisance, at the same time, it only lasts for so long. And once that cage falls down, CAZ is just completely open to TMNT's draft.
Well, everyone from CAZ has really got to worry about all this healing. There's the blink in from Minos looking to get that Gold Fury, but it does go the way of TMNT. And this is a fight against 5 members with Fire Giant. Surprised we didn't see TMNT really try to hard engage there, though I suppose the Odin cage was blocking off a majority of the members from TMNT. Remember, the only one who can get out of that cage easily is Kali with the jump. Everyone else kind of locked in there. Phantom was used by Predators to make sure that anyone caught could get out of danger, but that's a big win for CAZ now during the siege potential for TMNT. All it takes is one more cage, and it's already almost up, halfway there on the cooldown. Odin cage notoriously low cooldown, especially with how much CDR Minos has built on this Odin. Only 12 more seconds, basically, until that happens. Overpowered, forced to use the ultimate away, but without that Phantom, TMNT could find themselves in an awkward position during the siege.
TMNT certainly still need to be really careful around these tower sieging moments. Welshbeastq trying to be a little bit sneaky over here, doing the classic Apollo strategy of just securing as much split push as possible, really trying to create a lot of chaos for CAZ, splitting the map, which is probably more favorable to the side of TMNT, considering that they're the ones with the healer composition.
Absolutely, but Welshbeastq does not have any life steal, so the poke from Jeron is going to be incredibly relevant. Though with the Death Toll and the Fire Giant buff, even if he doesn't have one of his healers here with him, it's going to be pretty easy for Welshbeastq to stay fairly healthy, despite some poke from Jeron, who did back on the right-hand side. Minos still looking for the cage, but not enough to secure any cages there. Welshbeastq gets a tier 2 tower and immediately hops up into the chariot looking for TMNT to help him out on this right-hand side. Minos gonna jump in. Welshbeastq lands down, but no cage quite yet. The focus is onto the tier 2 tower from the Hunter. There's Circle of Protection. There's a bunch caught in there, but not enough. A beautiful ultimate from 50-meter fly. Make sure that no one takes any damage from that Circle of Protection. Auzrik falling low, but not enough to get him before that ultimate comes off cooldown. Kali gonna be able to escape no problem whatsoever. Tier 2 tower does fall. And again, these characters are so low for TMNT, but CAZ just cannot find a way to finish them off.
And most of them are now already above that half health threshold, and now they're just going to look for the turnaround.
Looking for it. Auzrik gonna jump forward. No pullback there from Predators. A lot of movement speed between Isis and Thanatos. Difficult to catch both of those characters. Portal Demon has respawned, so TMNT for Lyfe just gonna look for the objective once more. They've really seemed to favor this Portal Demon. It's really worked out for them thus far.
For the most part, it's safe for them to just secure these smaller objectives around the map. Elexum trying to put up a little bit of a fight, but that's Portal Demon's going to go the way of TMNT, no problem there. Now they're just going to back, spend that gold, and then I'd imagine they're just looking to regroup and try to take off that last T2 standing on the side of CAZ Esports. And the real difficult part here for CAZ is that so much pressure now falls onto the back of Minos and trying to ensure that his Odin ultimates are perfect.
Minos trying to find one in the backside right now, but Phantom is available for Predators. Tier 2 tower very, very low in the middle lane. An early Undying Love there for 50-meter fly does discourage TMNT from pushing down this tier 2 tower. That and the fact that the Fire Giant buff has fallen off of them. 45 seconds until that objective respawns. So they get 2 tier 2 towers, almost knocked down the middle one as well. A Portal Demon at Gold Fury. It's going to put TMNT for Lyfe in the lead now, right around 2,000 gold, 2,500 gold rather.
And this is the position that you never want to be in against a healer composition, is the 2K lead. While small right now, at the same time, TMNT's draft is basically online at this point in time. So the real issue for CAZ now is how are we going to lock anybody down? Because we saw what happened underneath that T2 fight already, and that was with the FG regen and everything, sure. But at the same time, it's just so... It's such a problem for Thanatos to really get in and execute like you'd want your Thanatos to be able to do, and so much of an issue for Overpowered to really look for these backline kills, which I feel as though TMNT has almost eliminated him at this point in time.
I mean, CAZ just has a tough time getting into anyone really on the side of TMNT. Beads forced out of Overpowered due to a nice pickup and push by Predators. Does have that Phantom available. In fact, he also has a Frenzy. He's ready to go on this objective. You can see TMNT really want to push this. They know that if they are able to secure this Fire Giant, it's going to be difficult for TMNT, or excuse me, CAZ, to fight back into it. There's the Frenzy, and where did Waldrom go? Immediately put down. There's the Undying Love. Knock up onto Minos, who finds 3 with the cage, and Predators is there with that Phantom. Doesn't even use it. Welshbeastq looking to pick up the kill onto the Soul Laner, but can't quite find it. Overpowered still lurking in the jungle, but the rest of CAZ is on retreat as Auzrik able to pick up the enemy Soul Laner. Now he's going on to Elexum. Where do you go as this Isis? Nowhere for him to escape. Deicide the way of TMNT. Right side Phoenix Falls. They're not even worried about the Fire Giant Taco. They can go right for the end.
With this much sustain on your side, especially after deciding, at this point in time, it looks like, and it most likely will be, the Titan falling on the side of CAZ Esports.
Waldrom is back, does have the abduct there onto Auzrik, but I don't think he's got enough damage. Auzrik just needs to focus down this Titan. That's exactly what he and the rest of TMNT for Lyfe will do. Looking like one of the top teams coming in out of relegations and proving it once more up against their relegation opponents, now both in the SCL, but TMNT for Lyfe still with the upper hand over CAZ Esports there.
TMNT's draft just favored them from the start, especially since, like we discussed, CAZ just wasn't engaging as early as they needed to be, and while they were able to secure an early goal lead, it just wasn't enough against a draft of that threat with so much sustain. You just can't really afford to let yourselves not get a massive snowball lead against them.
I mean, we talk about it all the time. I mean, the Fire Giant Elementals, Gold Fury, Oracles, these are the contestable objectives, and you're supposed to take those up against a composition like TMNT had. But when you've got that much late game up against that much early game, if I'm CAZ, I'm saying that their speed buff is now a contestable objective because of how strong we are in the early game in comparison. I mean, you're talking Isis Thanatos compared to Aphrodite Kali. I mean, you have to force those engagements. CAZ didn't. They got the middle, the neutral objectives, but got very, very little in terms of enemy buffs. Came back to bite them. Game 1.